Hello friends, welcome aboard the Sleepy Fairy Tale Express. I'm the Red Mermaid. This train is a dream journey to fairy tale land. Have you all got your train tickets? Subscribe and hit the like button to always be able to ride. Close your eyes, prick up your ears, and listen in a comfortable position. Today's story is The Table, the Ass, and the Stick. Long ago, in a place where the green meadows merged seamlessly with a quaint village, there lived an old tailor. His hair was silvered with age, and his eyes sparkled with a mirth that suggested laughter. This kind old man was father to 3 cheerful sons, yet their home harbored only one goat. This small and endearing creature was not only a beloved member of the family, but also the main provider for their livelihood. Each morning, the tailor's sons would take turns leading the goat to the lush green meadows, dew-kissed and fresh. Under the morning sun, the gentle steps of the goat alongside the soothing whispers of the breeze through the grass seemed almost musical. They made sure to select the freshest, most succulent grass for their goat, ensuring it was well fed and happy. Each son's day with the goat painted a perfect picture of joy and harmony, their laughter mingling with the goat's content bleats, crafting a picturesque day. On one particularly enchanting afternoon, the eldest son took the goat to a serene graveyard by the old church, a place teeming with various herbs. These fragrant herbs encircled the graveyard like treasures of the forest. Sunlight filtered through the trees, softly illuminating the herbs while the goat frolicked amongst them, its tail wagging joyfully. Occasionally, it would pause to munch on some fresh herbs, crunching them contentedly. As dusk approached, painting the sky with shades of yellow and red, the eldest son asked the goat, "Have you had enough to eat, my dear goat?" With a gentle voice, he looked into the goat's sparkling eyes. The goat, having enjoyed a day of fun and feast, bleated happily in response, its bleats almost resembling laughter. The eldest son then led the goat back home, securing it safely in its pen. "Now that you've eaten well and had fun, let's rest," he said while patting the goat's head. Through the small window facing the sunset, he gave the goat one last look before closing the door for the night, with the goat settling down comfortably, seemingly understanding the boy's intentions. As night deepened, the tailor, with a worried look, asked his eldest son, "Did you feed the goat well?" His voice carried a hint of concern. The eldest son confidently replied, "It's so full it couldn't eat another bite." However, the tailor, wanting to see for himself, walked to the pen under the moonlight. Inside, the goat lay quietly, and the tailor sighed in relief. Approaching gently, he petted the goat's head, asking softly, "Are you full, my goat?" The goat opened its eyes to look at the tailor, its eyes faintly glimmering in the dark. Then, with a sad tone, it replied, "How could I be full? I only jumped around puddles all day. I didn't find a single blade of grass." "Bah, Bah! Hearing this, the tailor's heart sank as he realized his son's deceit. The goat's eyes betrayed its hunger, and its small movements showed disappointment. The tailor, comforting the goat once more, promised, "Don't worry, I will take you out myself tomorrow and find you some delicious grass." He then closed the pen door, his heart heavy with sadness. Anger filled the tailor's face as he approached his son, his voice trembling. "What is this I hear?" His voice was unusually stern. As his son stumbled over his words, the tailor's anger grew, and he shouted, "You liar! How could you starve the goat and claim it was fed?" Tears welled up in the tailor's eyes as his anger blazed. Unable to contain his fury, he grabbed the heavy tailoring scissors from the wall. As he lifted the scissors, his hand trembled. The eldest son, seeing his father's furious gaze, trembled with fear. The tailor, overwhelmed with rage, chased his son out of the house, striking him with the scissors. The eldest son, tears streaming down his face from injustice and fear, had to leave home. He walked away without looking back, his path fading into the darkness. The villagers, witnessing this, felt pity but could do nothing to contradict the tailor's decision. The eldest son thus disappeared into the night. The following morning, it was the second son's turn to take the goat out. Though slightly tense due to the previous day's events, he decided to make it a good day for the goat. They passed through the village to a beautiful garden located in a secluded area. This garden, specially known for its variety of herbs, was enclosed by a fence. The garden was filled with fragrant herbs like lavender, fresh mint, and celery, which the goat particularly enjoyed. The second son led the goat near the fence, and it happily jumped around, tasting the herbs. It was a picturesque scene. The second son watched, smiling occasionally. As the goat joyously munched on the herbs, the second son sat on the grass, the soft breeze and the fluttering butterflies among the garden flowers bringing him peace. Feeling content for the first time in a while, he watched the goat play freely in nature, his heart filling with happiness as the day went by. "Are you full, my goat?" The goat replied, "I'm stuffed, can't eat another bite." "Bah, bah. Let's head home then." The second son led the goat back home, securing it tightly in the pen. As the evening sky turned golden, the day slowly faded. The second son, pleased with the goat's happy day, led it home. The goat, having enjoyed a feast of green herbs from the garden, was now ready to rest comfortably. They walked through the village to their house, where the second son securely tied the goat in the pen. "Looks like you had a great meal today, my goat," he said, petting the goat's head as it closed its eyes comfortably, rubbing its head against his hand in gratitude. The second son closed the pen door, leaving the goat to rest peacefully after a day of joy. He felt at peace as he returned to his family, his mind finally at ease. As dawn broke, the tailor, with deep concern, asked his son, "Did you feed the goat well?" The second son confidently answered, "Yes, it's so full it couldn't eat anymore." His voice was filled with confidence, yet the tailor's heart was still clouded with doubt. The tailor, wanting to verify for himself, went to where the goat was resting. Observing the quietly resting goat, the tailor gently asked, "Are you full, my goat?" His voice was filled with worry and affection for the goat. The goat slowly raised its eyes to meet the tailor's and then sighed, replying, "What could I have eaten to be full? I only jumped over puddles. I didn't find a single blade of grass." "Bah, bah." The goat's voice was filled with sadness and disappointment. The tailor's face turned pale as he realized his son had lied. He felt a profound disappointment as the trust he had in his second son crumbled. The deceit of his son and the hunger of the goat deeply disappointed the tailor, forcing him to make another difficult decision. The tailor's rage exploded instantaneously. "You wicked thing! How could you starve such a good creature?" His voice echoed throughout the house, his face turning red with anger. He walked towards his son, fiercely grabbing the tailoring scissors from the wall. The second son, his face filled with fear, stepped back, but the tailor could not control his emotions. He swung the scissors at his son, who staggered and fell from the impact. "Get out of this house! Don't ever set foot here again," the tailor shouted. The second son, teary-eyed, left the house, his steps heavy. The tailor watched his son walk away, his anger not subsiding. He returned to the pen and gently petted the goat, promising, "Don't worry, I'll make sure this never happens again." However, deep inside, he felt the sorrow and loneliness of losing both his sons. All eyes now turned to the youngest son, the third. Having witnessed his brother's mistakes, he resolved to properly care for the goat. The youngest son led the goat to a densely bushed forest. This place was filled with fresh and tasty leaves, perfect for the goat's liking. The air in the forest was refreshing, and the chirping of birds filled the area. The youngest son carefully watched as the goat freely roamed and foraged. The goat began to eat the leaves joyfully, and the youngest son smiled, watching it eat its fill with satisfaction. The youngest son sat next to the goat, watching it and reflecting on his brother's experiences. He cherished the goat, genuinely deciding to take good care of it. That day, the youngest son provided everything the goat needed, showing a responsibility that starkly contrasted with his brother's. His caring nature and consideration for the goat were evident, making it a truly happy day for both. As evening approached, the shadows in the forest grew longer, and the sky began to fill with red hues. The youngest son, having spent a delightful day with the goat in the forest, prepared to head home. He affectionately asked the goat, "Are you full, my goat?" The goat responded with a happy expression, "I'm stuffed, can't eat another bite." Bah, bah. Its voice was filled with contentment and joy. The youngest son was relieved by the goat's response, and they began their walk home. Upon arriving home, the youngest son led the goat safely into the pen. He carefully tied the goat, ensuring it could rest comfortably. "You did really well today, my goat," he said, patting the goat's head as it nuzzled his hand and closed its eyes comfortably. The youngest son closed the pen door and looked back one more time before entering the house, whispering, "Let's have another great day tomorrow." His heart was filled with pride and satisfaction for having protected the goat from the mishaps that befell his brothers. His careful and responsible actions set him apart from his siblings, allowing the goat to end its day happily. One morning, as sunlight dimly illuminated through the window, the tailor cautiously asked the youngest son, "Did you feed the goat well?" The youngest confidently answered, "It's so full it couldn't fit another leaf." His voice was filled with certainty, yet the tailor's heart still harbored doubts from the previous lies. The tailor, not trusting his son's words, headed to the goat's pen to check on its condition. He looked into the goat's eyes and gently asked, "Are you full, my goat?" His voice mixed with worry and hope. The goat briefly raised its head to look at the tailor and then sadly replied, "What could I have eaten to be full? I only jumped over puddles. I didn't find a single blade of grass." Bah, bah. The goat's response once again wounded the tailor's heart. The tailor's anger erupted. Such a liar! Just like the others, forgetting faith and duty. "I will ensure you no longer take me for a fool." His voice was filled with anger, and his face contorted with intense emotion. The youngest son was shocked by his father's reaction. The tailor, filled with rage, grabbed the tailoring scissors and approached his son, striking him harshly. The heavy blows from the scissors hit the youngest son, who screamed in pain and shock. Unable to bear the pain and disappointment, the youngest son decided to leave the house. He quickly exited without looking back, walking into the uncertain future. Tears streamed down his face, his heart filled with resentment and sorrow towards his father. The tailor watched his son leave through the door, his anger still not subsiding. He took a deep breath and returned to spend time quietly with the goat. However, deep inside, he felt guilt for his actions and the sorrow of losing all three sons. The old tailor was now left alone with the goat. After all three sons had left the house, he felt a deep loneliness and bitterness. The next morning, as sunlight seeped through the window, the tailor made a decision and walked to the goat's pen. The goat, seeing him, wagged its tail happily. "Ah, you good creature. I will take you to the meadow myself," the tailor said, petting the goat's soft head. His voice was tender and filled with affection. The tailor led the goat out of the house, past the village, to a wide green pasture. This place was perfect for the goat to run freely and graze. As they arrived at the pasture, the goat could not contain its excitement and ran towards the grass. The goat hopped and tasted various grasses and plants, while the tailor watched with a content smile. "Eat your fill at least this once," the tailor said. The goat continued to eat grass until the evening. The tailor quietly observed, feeling a sense of relief that he was doing his best to care for the goat. As the evening sky turned red, the tailor enjoyed this quiet, peaceful time with the goat. That evening, the goat lay comfortably in the middle of the grass, and the tailor looked on, finally feeling a sense of peace in his heart. This small moment with the goat became significant for the tailor, reminding him once again of the value of time with family. As the evening deepened, the tailor approached the goat and quietly asked, "Are you full, my goat?" His voice carried the affection of watching the goat joyfully hop around the meadow all day. The goat, after a satisfying day, responded with a content expression, "I'm stuffed, can't eat another bite." "Bah, bah." Its voice was cheerful and overflowing with energy. The sight of the goat's round, full belly was proof of its happiness. "Let's go home then," the tailor said, gently holding the goat's leash. They walked home together, and the tailor led the goat safely into the pen. He securely tied the goat, ensuring it was well settled for the night. The tailor was about to leave the goat's pen when he changed his mind. He turned back and looked at the goat, smiling as he said, "You've had your fill this time, haven't you?" His voice mixed satisfaction and joy, but the goat's response was unexpected. The goat looked at the tailor with sadness in its eyes and said, "What could I have eaten to be full? I only jumped over puddles. I didn't find a single blade of grass." "Bah, bah." The tailor was shocked by the goat's response. His heart felt heavy as he realized that all the misunderstandings were the root of the tragedies. But at that moment, his disappointment and anger turned towards the goat. "You ungrateful creature. Simply chasing you away isn't enough. I'll make sure you can't strut around the proud tailors anymore," he said, unable to contain his anger. The tailor hurriedly fetched a razor. He applied soap to the goat's head and quickly started shaving the fur. The goat's hair was swiftly trimmed down, causing the goat discomfort and fear. Considering the tailoring scissors too dangerous, the tailor instead picked up a whip. He whipped the goat, and in pain and terror, the goat jumped up and fled. The goat ran desperately, darting out of the village and into the deep forest. With its head bare, it looked as if it had been humiliated. The goat did not look back as it disappeared into the depths of the forest. This event shocked the tailor, and he felt deep regret and guilt for his actions. Left alone in the house, the tailor sank into deep sadness. His home, once filled with laughter and vitality, was now silent and somber. The tailor reminisced about the times he spent laughing with his sons, shedding tears as he longed for them. He wondered where his sons were and how they were doing, but no one could answer his questions. The tailor sat by the window in the evening, thinking of his sons who had left home for different reasons. He wondered if he had been too harsh on them and worried about their well-being. As time passed, without news of his sons, it became increasingly difficult for the tailor to bear. The house was filled with memories, but these memories only made the tailor's heart ache more. He lamented the loss of the most important people in his life, constantly looking out the door, hoping for their return. However, disappointment was all that awaited him. After leaving home, the eldest son entered a workshop to learn the craft of furniture making. He began his lessons to become a carpenter, working diligently to learn new skills. To forget the pain of leaving home and the conflict with his father, he immersed himself in his work, improving his skills daily. The eldest son became increasingly proficient at creating beautiful furniture. He had a special talent for handling wood and showed remarkable precision in his work. The master carpenter was impressed by the eldest son's dedication and quick learning, guiding him through more rigorous and in-depth training. The furniture made by the eldest son gradually gained reputation in the area, and his work received widespread recognition. However, a part of him always hoped to reconcile with his father and show him his success. The eldest son learned not only the skills of furniture making, but also important life lessons. He reflected on his past and strove to become a better person, maturing through the process. Now, he was not just a carpenter, but a true artisan on his path. After completing his apprenticeship, the eldest son began the traditional wandering years experienced by craftsmen who have finished their apprenticeship. This period, known as wandering years, allows them to gain experience and learn various skills as they travel the world. Before starting his journey, his master gave the eldest son a special gift, a seemingly ordinary wooden table. However, this table was actually a magical table. The master handed the table to the eldest son and explained its use. Just say, "Table, set yourself," and the table will magically set itself with food, he instructed. With the magic table, the eldest son could travel freely without any worries. He was confident that this table alone could sustain him for life. Wherever he went, whenever he was hungry, he just needed to set up his table and say, "Table, set yourself," and it would instantly be laden with food. The table would set itself with clean tablecloths, plates full of food, and even drinks, all appearing as if by magic. This table allowed the eldest son to dine sumptuously without seeking inns or expensive restaurants, freeing him from financial burdens and making his travels much more enjoyable and rich. After his travels, the eldest son decided to return home, believing his father's anger would have subsided over time and that his magical table would surely make his father accept him again. With nostalgia and anticipation, he set off for home. As evening fell on his journey home, the eldest son stopped at a nearby inn for a meal. The inn was bustling with guests, and the atmosphere was lively. The people welcomed him and invited him to join them at their table. "Sit with us," they offered, "since it's hard to get food here at the inn." The eldest decided to invite all the inn's guests to his special table. "No need to take away your meager food. I will invite you all instead." The guests laughed, thinking he was joking, but the eldest was serious. He carefully placed his small table in the middle of the room. Looking around confidently, he said, "Table, set yourself." As he spoke, the magic began. The table was instantly set with a variety of dishes, astonishingly more exquisite and delicious than anything the innkeeper could have provided. The eldest shared his food generously. "Please eat," he said, and the guests, initially taken aback by the magic, soon gathered around the table to eat. They marveled at the table's remarkable feature of automatically refilling the dishes as they began to empty. The innkeeper watched everything from a corner. The magic table was the most astonishing thing he had ever seen, and he imagined how wonderful it would be to have such a table for his inn. "Such a table is exactly what I need for my business," he thought. The eldest and the guests enjoyed their time together, laughing and talking late into the night. They were all filled with joy, and eventually, they went to their rooms to rest. The eldest was no exception. He secured his precious magic table by hanging it on the wall and went to bed peacefully. Meanwhile, the innkeeper could not sleep. He was deeply impressed by the table's magic and imagined how it could transform his inn. He pondered how to take possession of the table and eventually came up with a plan. The innkeeper went to the storage room to inspect the table. There, he found an old table that looked similar to the magic one. He quietly swapped the magic table with the old one, hoping the swap would go unnoticed. The next morning, the eldest son woke up, paid his lodging fee, and carefully packed his magic table, unaware that it had been switched by the innkeeper. His heart was full of excitement about returning home. The eldest son started his journey, breathing in the fresh morning air and shaking off the travel weariness. By midday, he had reached his father's house, where his father ran out to greet him, embracing him with great joy. The father was relieved and happy to see his son safe after such a long time apart. Back home, the eldest son enjoyed a warm welcome from his father, who was curious about what he had learned and brought back from his travels. "What have you learned, my eldest?" "I became a carpenter," the eldest proudly responded. "That's a fine craft. But what have you brought back from your wanderings?" the father asked with more curiosity. "The best thing I've brought is this small table," the eldest said, pointing to the table and speaking confidently. The tailor examined the table closely. At first glance, it seemed to him a worn and poor-quality ordinary table. He was skeptical of his son's claim. "You haven't made a masterpiece. This is just an old, poor-quality table." But the eldest did not give up and explained the magic of his table. "But this table knows magic. I just put the table in front of me and say, 'Table, set yourself,' and immediately, all the foods and wines I want appear. Invite our relatives and friends. Let's all eat and drink to our heart's content. This little table can feed us all." Hearing this, the father was half convinced but curious. Motivated by his son's confident demeanor and proposal, he decided to gather family and friends to test the table's magic. This could be an opportunity for the eldest to prove himself and his skills to his family. If the eldest's claims were true, this small table would be a great blessing for their family, and the father and everyone would be proud of his achievements. In front of the gathered guests, the eldest son attempted to showcase his magic table. He placed the table in the center of the room and confidently said, "Table, set yourself." However, the table showed no response. It remained as static as an ordinary table, not moving at all. At that moment, the eldest realized that someone had swapped his table. Realizing this, the eldest was filled with disappointment and embarrassment. He had boasted that his table could perform magic, but in reality, it was just an ordinary table. This made him feel like a liar in front of his family and guests, standing there ashamed. The relatives initially laughed but soon mocked his failure. As the table failed to perform any magic, all the guests left without eating or drinking anything, disappointed. The second son, seeking to change his life, went to a miller to learn the trade of milling. He worked hard and quickly learned the skills of the miller, earning the craftsman's recognition for his diligence and effort. When all his lessons were completed, the craftsman decided to reward the second son's outstanding performance with a special gift. The craftsman gave the second son a unique donkey. At first glance, the donkey looked ordinary, but unlike typical donkeys, it could not pull carts or carry loads. The second son was initially puzzled about the use of such a donkey. "What good is a donkey that can't work?" he asked. The craftsman smiled and replied, "Put this donkey on a cloth and say bric-a-brac, and it will pour out gold coins, from behind and in front. Hearing this, the second son was astonished. "Oh, what a marvelous donkey this is!" This golden-producing donkey promised tremendous wealth for the second son. With this special donkey, he no longer had to worry about money, and he was ready to start a new life. Thanks to the craftsman's generous gift, the second son set off confidently on his new life. He expressed his deep gratitude to the craftsman and, with his golden donkey, set out to explore the world. Now, he had no financial worries. Whenever needed, he simply shouted "Bricklebrit," and gold coins rained down from the sky, and all he had to do was collect them. Wherever he went, the second son experienced only the best, staying in luxury accommodations, tasting the finest foods, and freely purchasing expensive items. His purse was always full, allowing him to acquire anything he desired without hassle. The second son's wandering life, exploring the world and gaining a wealth of experiences, gradually made him long for the comfort of home and to be with his family again. He believed his golden donkey would be the key to appeasing his father's anger and being welcomed back into the family fold. When the second son decided to return to his father, he accidentally entered the same inn where his elder brother had his table swapped. Upon entering the inn, the second son looked around and recognized the innkeeper. He cautiously began a conversation with the innkeeper, not mentioning his golden donkey, but trying to gain his favor. The second son's goal was to keep his golden donkey safe while returning to his father. As soon as the second son arrived at the inn, he handled the golden donkey with great care. Knowing the special abilities that the donkey possessed, he could not entrust it to just anyone. Although the innkeeper offered to tie up the donkey kindly, the second son cautiously declined. "No need to trouble yourself. I will take my donkey to the stable and tie it up myself. I need to know exactly where it is," he said. His words reflected a deep attachment and responsibility towards the donkey. He led the donkey to the stable himself and, after looking around to ensure the safety, securely tied it up. Initially, the innkeeper found the second son's behavior odd. Usually, guests at the inn would leave their animals in the care of the innkeeper or his staff. When the second son decided to take care of his donkey himself, the innkeeper thought this guest would not spend much. However, the next actions of the second son completely overturned the innkeeper's expectations. The second son pulled out 2 pieces of gold from his pocket and told the innkeeper, "Prepare only the finest for me." As he displayed the gold coins, the innkeeper's eyes widened in amazement. Realizing that this guest was unexpectedly wealthy, the innkeeper hurried out to provide the best service as requested by the guest. He went to the market and bought the finest foods and drinks available. He selected the freshest meats, the most delicious wines, and seasonal fruits and vegetables. He meticulously prepared everything to meet the guests' expectations and tried his best to provide a lavish and delicious meal that would satisfy the second son. After the meal, when the second son tried to pay for the food, the innkeeper, knowing his wealth, decided to take advantage of it. He demanded much more gold than the usual price, adding extra charges. The second son, unfazed, reached for his pocket to pull out the gold, but it was completely empty. The second son, in order to resolve the situation at the inn, took a tablecloth and headed to the stable. Unaware of his intentions, the innkeeper's curiosity grew, and he secretly followed to see what the second son was up to. Once at the stable, the second son entered, closed the door, and locked it. The innkeeper peeped through a knothole, curiously watching the second son's actions. The second son spread the tablecloth under the donkey and shouted the magic spell, Bricklebrit. At that moment, as if by magic, the donkey began to drop gold coins from front and back. The gold shone brilliantly and piled up on the floor, and the sight left the innkeeper astonished and mixed with greed. After witnessing the second son collect thousands of gold coins from the golden donkey, the innkeeper could not control his greed. Overwhelmed by the sight of such wealth, he decided to enact his own plan. Thousands of gold coins, indeed. I could mint my own money with this. Such a purse wouldn't be too bad, he thought, and while the second son was asleep, he carried out his plan. The second son, exhausted, went to bed after paying for his meal with the gold from the donkey. His head was filled with thoughts of a comfortable sleep, but during the night, the innkeeper's plot was in motion. Taking advantage of the darkness, the innkeeper quietly went to the stable. He stealthily replaced the golden donkey with an ordinary one, hoping that when the second son awoke, he would not realize that his donkey had been switched. In the dawn, the second son took the donkey and headed for his father's house. He was completely unaware of the innkeeper's deceit and still believed he possessed the golden donkey. By noon, he reached his father's house and was warmly welcomed. Amid the joy of their reunion, the father inquired about what his son had learned and brought back. The second son proudly declared that he had become a miller and, responding to his father's next question, described the donkey he had brought. The father perceived the donkey as a common work animal, but the second son insisted it was a magical golden donkey. He boasted about the donkey's special ability, declaring he would make his entire family wealthy. Yes, but this is no ordinary creature. It's a golden donkey. Just say Bricklebrit, and this creature will pour out gold abundantly. Call all our relatives, I will make everyone rich. With his father's expectations upon him, the second son prepared to demonstrate the donkey's magic in front of his family and relatives. As everyone's eyes focused on him, he confidently shouted, "Bricklebrit." However, contrary to expectations, the donkey did not produce any gold at all. Disappointment appeared on everyone's faces, and the second son realized he had been deceived by the innkeeper. This incident was a profound shock to the second son. In front of all the gathered people, he felt deep embarrassment and disappointment and apologized. "I have made a terrible mistake. I trusted the magic of the golden donkey too much. I am truly sorry to all of you." Despite his sincere apology, the family could not hide their disappointment and had to return to their original, impoverished life. The third son chose the path of a turner, a craftsman who shapes wood into objects. Because becoming a turner required high levels of skill and precision, he had to invest the longest time learning the craft among his brothers. During this period, the third son learned numerous techniques from various masters, enhancing his craftsmanship. Life seemed not easy for the brothers. The third son occasionally received letters from his brothers, and each time he read about their hardships and ordeals, his heart grew heavy. Especially, the stories of what they had experienced at the last inn they stayed were shocking to the third son. His brothers reported that they had been deceived by the innkeeper, who had tricked them out of their magical items. When the third son's apprenticeship finally concluded, his master prepared a special gift to commend his effort and growth. This gift initially appeared to be a simple sack, but it was far from ordinary. The master handed the sack to the third son, saying, "This sack will be a tool that can apply all the skills you've learned. But more importantly, it has a special ability hidden within it. When you face difficulties, this sack will be of great help." The third son learned more about the secret of the sack he received from his master. It turned out that the club inside the sack was not just a tool, but a magical protector. According to the master's explanation, this club could protect the third son when he was in danger. "Inside, there is a club," said the master. The third son, curious about the weight of the sack, asked about the real purpose of the club. The master answered his question and explained the true function of the club. "You'll see what this club can do if someone tries to harm you. Just say this, 'Club, come out of the sack.' Then the club will pop out and start dancing joyfully on their backs. They won't be able to move for 8 days, continuing to dance until you say, 'Club, get back into the sack.'" The third son was thankful for the protection the magical club offered. Now, he could face any danger fearlessly and respond appropriately to those who threatened him. The master's gift held more than physical protection. It became an essential means to safeguard him from any dangers he might encounter during his journeys. The third son thanked his master and began a new journey with the magical sack slung over his shoulder. The sack meant more to him than just an object. It was a guardian that could protect him in dangerous moments, symbolizing his trust and courage. As soon as the third son hit the road, his special sack was put to the test. Several times, hooligans and villains accosted him. In each instance, the third son calmly recited the incantation to call the club, come out of the sack. As soon as he finished speaking, the club would spring from the sack and start thrashing the attackers indiscriminately. The club moved with dazzling speed, and none could react in time. Regardless of whether the assailants wore coats or jackets, the club continued to beat them. As a result, all who intended to harm the third son ended up on the ground, curling up in pain and unable to further threaten him. By evening, the third son finally reached the inn where his brothers had experienced misfortune. He began to recount the various incidents he encountered during his travels. As soon as he entered the inn, the third son drew attention and carefully placed his sack on the table, starting to explain his adventures to the people around. People discover things like set the table, or the golden donkey. I don't ignore them, but they are nothing compared to the treasure in the sack I have. The third son boasted about the special abilities of his sack, sparking curiosity among the inn's guests. The innkeeper, recalling the misfortune of the third son's brothers, felt a great interest in his words. He remembered not to repeat the same mistake and decided to treat the third son with more respect and care. Listening to the third son's stories, the innkeeper felt a great greed internally. He thought, perhaps the sack is filled with jewels. I must have it too. Good things come in threes, don't they? Having already deceived the brothers twice before, he regarded this as his last opportunity. As the night deepened, the third son, tired from the day's travels, went to bed. He used the long table as a pillow, comfortably lying down with the sack. Once the innkeeper was sure the third son had fallen into a deep sleep, he cautiously approached him. He quietly grabbed the third son's sack, attempting to stealthily remove it. As the innkeeper's hand clutched the sack, he tried to check its contents as quietly as possible. He wondered what was hidden inside and considered replacing it with something else. The third son had anticipated the innkeeper's attempt to steal his sack. His vigilance was accurate, and when the innkeeper tried to forcibly remove the sack, he immediately called the club. "Club, come out of the sack," he shouted. As soon as the spell was complete, a small club sprung from the sack towards the innkeeper. The club began beating him indiscriminately, and each strike caused great pain to the innkeeper. He screamed miserably trying to dodge the club's blows, but the speed and strength of the club were beyond his ability to counter. As the innkeeper's screams grew louder, the club hit him even harder. Finally, the innkeeper collapsed on the floor, exhausted. His body was twisted in pain, and the onlookers were shocked by the scene. The third son then commanded the club to calm the situation. "Club, get back into the sack." The club immediately returned to the sack, and some peace was restored in the inn. After subduing the innkeeper, the third son made his demands. "Return, set the table, and the golden donkey, or my club will start a new dance." The innkeeper, physically and emotionally hurt from the club's attack, barely whispered his reply. "I will return everything, just please put the enchanted spirit back into the sack." He humbly admitted his wrongdoing and asked the third son for forgiveness. Recognizing the innkeeper's changed attitude, the third son set his conditions. "I will forgive you, but do no more harm to others." He demanded a promise for the future from the innkeeper, warning him not to repeat the same mistakes. The third son commanded the club inside the sack. "Club, get into the sack." Following his order, the club immediately returned to the sack and once again appeared as a mere wooden piece. This small club had played a significant role in overcoming dangers and achieving justice for the third son, and now it rested after completing its task. The third son returned home with his father and brother's treasures, set the table, and the golden donkey, in high spirits. As he arrived home, his father greatly rejoiced at his son's return, curious about the knowledge and skills he had acquired from abroad. "Father, I learned the work of a turner." "That's tough work. What did you bring back from wandering?" "I brought back a very precious item. Just one club in a sack." "What? Just one club? That's great. You can chop all the wood with it." "Not just that. When I say, 'Club, come out of the sack,' a club pops out from the sack and dances a very bad dance with those who tried to harm me. They won't stop until they fall to the ground and beg for mercy. Look, I've retrieved, set the table, and the golden donkey with this club." The thieving innkeeper had taken these treasures from my brothers. "Father, call my 2 brothers and invite all our relatives. I will treat everyone to food and drinks and fill their pockets with gold." The house, filled with the third son's return, once again transformed into a grand festival scene. The old tailor doubted his son's claim about the golden donkey's abilities until he gathered all the relatives to witness the event. The house was filled with anticipation and excitement, and all eyes were focused on the third son and the golden donkey. The third son laid a cloth on the floor and placed the golden donkey on it. He asked his brother, the miller, to command the donkey. As the miller commanded, bric-a-brac, magically, gold pieces began pouring out from the donkey in an instant. The gold fell like a torrential rain, and the floor was covered in gold. The relatives were astonished and cheered at the sight. They touched and held the gold, marveling at its authenticity. As the donkey continued to produce such an abundance of gold, the old tailor truly recognized the value of the treasures his sons had brought. The third son decided to showcase the magical table in front of the family. He placed the table on the floor and asked his brother, the furniture maker, to command the table. As soon as the furniture maker said, "Set the table," the magic began. The table was instantly filled with the most delicate and beautiful dishes, and a variety of foods were served. The food provided at this table boasted a quality and flavor never before seen in the old tailor's house. This scene brought great joy to the family, and they all gathered to enjoy a lavish feast together. The kind and old tailor deeply appreciated that all these circumstances were possible thanks to his 3 sons. He no longer needed to toil with needles, rulers, and irons. Instead, he could live in joy and delight with his sons. But what happened to the goat that had caused the 3 sons to be driven out? That story will also be told. The goat, having been made bald by the old tailor, hid from the eyes of the villagers in a fox's den. Ashamed of its appearance, the goat hoped no one would recognize it. One day, as the fox returned from hunting, he was about to enter his den when he saw 2 eyes flashing in the darkness. Startled, the fox jumped out of the den in fear, leaving the spot to the goat. The goat had found a new sanctuary in that place. One day, as the fox wandered through the forest, he encountered a bear. The fox's face was pale with fear, and his expression mixed with surprise and confusion. The bear, seeing the fox's strange appearance, asked what had happened. "Fox brother, what's wrong? Why such a face?" The fox replied with a trembling voice, Some terrible beast was sitting in my den, staring at me with burning eyes." The bear boldly suggested, "Let's drive it away together." And the 2 animals headed towards the fox's den. They cautiously entered the den, the bear leading and the fox following. However, as soon as the bear entered the den, the same scene that the fox had experienced unfolded. The bald goat's eyes sparkled like flames in the darkness. These blazing eyes also frightened the bear. When the bear's eyes met those of the terrible beast, he felt chills and immediately fled the place. The fox and the bear became convinced that something mysterious and terrifying was hiding in that den. The bear decided he no longer wanted any relationship with that terrible creature and quickly left the place. This experience left a deep impression on both the fox and the bear, and they decided to avoid that den in the future. The story spread quickly among the forest animals, and rumors began to circulate that a frightening entity lived in that den. After the bear's terrifying experience in the fox's den, he roamed the forest and encountered a small bee. The fear was evident on the bear's face, and the bee, seeing his expression, approached him with a concerned voice. "Bear, you look really upset. Where did you leave your good mood?" The bear sighed and answered, "There's a beast with burning eyes squatting in the fox's den. I can't drive it away." Hearing the bear's story, the bee made a decision. "Poor bear. I may be a small and weak creature that you wouldn't even look at, but I will help you somehow." With these words, the bee flew straight to the fox's den. Upon finding the goat inside, it landed on the bald head of the goat and stung powerfully. Surprised by the sudden pain, the goat leaped up and screamed, rushing out of the den. The goat ran wildly through the forest and disappeared, with no one knowing its whereabouts. you.